What's the best snub-nosed revolver ever produced? Well, today we're going to show you, so buckle up. Hi everybody, welcome to the LocaCarnivore. Glad you could join us today. Let's talk about why this is the best snub-nosed revolver ever produced. And we're going to give you quite a bit of information on it. I'm going to make a case for why this is the best ever made. We're going to have a lot of good information all the way through the video, so you need to stick with us all the way to the end, okay? Well, I'll cut through some of the suspense for you right away. We're talking about a Smith & Wesson J-frame and a specific model of the Smith & Wesson J-frame, which is their smallest frame revolver. Now let's go through and give you a little bit of history on the J-frame revolver. First of all, it evolved from the I-frame back that was developed in around the turn of the 20th century. And the I-frame soldiered on in various guises up until after World War II. In 1950, Smith & Wesson introduced a improved version, what they called the J-frame. So you had I, now J. So this is the J-frame. It's still their small frame revolver, but they made some technical changes, strengthened it, and just made it a better gun all the way around. And this new J-frame was dubbed by Smith & Wesson the Chief's Special. And that moniker has been applied to quite a few different models in the Smith & Wesson small frame revolver line over the years. And by 1957, the J-frame had evolved into what Smith & Wesson dubbed the Model 36, which was an all steel frame snub-nosed revolver in .38 special and a steel cylinder. The barrel was 1 7/8 inches long. Let's call it 2 inches. It's a 2-inch snubby, like just about everything else. It's other competitors on the market. And that gun had an exposed hammer, so it was a very standard looking revolver. This is not a Model 36, obviously. But before that, in 1952, Smith & Wesson had come out with what they called the Centennial model. And they had various varieties of shrouded hammers. One was called the Bodyguard, and that had a fully rounded shroud. Don't have one to show you, I apologize. But that had a rounded shroud that the hammer spur still could be accessed through a slot in that shroud, and so you could still manually cock the weapon, so you could use either single or double action. Then they came out in '52 with the Centennial model. This was intended strictly for pocket carry, and it had a fully shrouded hammer, so it got rid of that humpback design, which aesthetically, frankly, I've never liked that Bodyguard profile. The Centennial line is much better. Now, the original Centennial had a grip safety on the back. And so the Centennial was available in 2 different models, one of which was the Model 42. The basic Model 40 was the gun in an all-steel frame, steel cylinder, steel barrel. Then they had what they called the airweight version, which they dubbed the Model 42, and that had an alloy frame. These were all blued guns, had an alloy frame, had that grip safety, steel cylinder though, and a steel barrel. By 1990, the Centennial had gone away. Long before that. But 1990, Smith & Wesson decided to revive it, but they changed it a little bit. They realized the grip safety on the back was completely superfluous, absolutely unnecessary. So they deleted that from the model, and they went with made it the alloy frame from the airweight Centennial, but they kept the steel cylinder and the steel barrel, and they called it the Model 642. And the 642 didn't last long. It dropped off the catalog in 1992, so we only had 2 years of production on that. Then in 1996, the gun made a comeback. Smith & Wesson had change of heart, realized they could sell this gun, and it's been with us since then. This particular gun here was produced probably just 5-6 years ago, give or take. So it's been around. It's still in the catalog. So the 642 is what we're going to talk about today, and I'm going to show you why it is such a good gun. In fact, it's the best snub-nosed revolver ever produced, in my opinion. Hey, and while you're at it, don't forget to support our channel. We'd appreciate it. We do have a Patreon. Links down in the description. Just go over there, show us a little love. Also go to our website, LocaCarnivore.com. Links down in the description. While you're there, hit the store tab at the top. You can get some LocaCarnivore merchandise. We'd appreciate your help on that as well. Well, that's an overview, a quick thumbnail history of the J-frame and then how it led to the 642. Let me give you just a little bit of my background, my history with J-frame Smith & Wessons. Back in the day, we're talking, this must have been the late 1980s roughly. Yeah, it goes back that far. But back in the late 1980s, I had found a used Model 36 in a gun store, and I bought it. And it was a pinned gun with the countersunk cylinders. I mean, this thing was from back in the day, probably roughly 1957 or something, when that Model 36 came out. And I never actually tracked it down. I don't remember what the dash number is, so you Smith & Wesson gurus can just forget about that. I don't know what the dash number was on it. May not even have had a dash number. At any rate, the gun was good. I liked it. However, I found that over time, it just didn't seem to have a good balance between the weight of the gun and the power that it offered, along with the somewhat limited capacity. And it was too heavy, really, realistically, for like an ankle. Not that I don't like ankle holsters, but it was just too heavy for that, in my opinion. And for the weight and the bulk and stuff, I figured you could easily carry a compact semi-auto, or even, and for a while there I had a 2.5-inch barreled K-frame 357 Magnum, which with shortened grip and all that, didn't take up that much more real estate, and you had 357 Magnum power instead of 38 special power. So that 36 just didn't seem to make it. I kept it around for quite a while. It just collected dust basically, and I carried other things. I shot other things. Eventually, I sold it. Probably get a different gun or whatever. Mistake. And I sort of gave up on the idea of the snubbies for quite a while. And then I finally ran into a 642. Ta-da! And at a gun store, and I looked at it, and it took me a few months to kind of go back and forth and really think it through. But eventually this thing really kind of, wiggled its way back into the back of my mind, and something said, go ahead and buy it. So I got the 642, and to be honest with you, once I got it, I knew that this really was the right way to go. Hey, don't forget to give us a big like on this video. We appreciate your support. Make sure you subscribe. We want you on the LocaCarnivore team, and ring that notification bell so you won't miss any of our great videos. Let's run you through the features of the Model 642 Smith & Wesson. For those of you who may not be familiar with the gun, it is, as we said, it's an alloy frame, aluminum alloy frame. It has a steel cylinder, and I'm not going to spin it. That's a very bad thing to do for a revolver. These morons in the movies and stuff that spin the cylinder and snap it closed, don't ever do that to a revolver. You will regret it. Anyway, and then we have an all stainless steel barrel without any inserts or anything like that, so we don't have like polymer or alloy with an insert like the scandium guns and stuff. So it's alloy and steel. Standard Smith & Wesson double action. It is double action only because of the shrouded hammer, but for the mission of this gun, it's really not an issue. You don't need to worry about having to take a single action shot, quite frankly. And it has a standard release. It does now come with these really nice grips, and as you can see, they're extraordinarily thin, which is really, we'll get to that in a minute. Now the gun overall is about 6.3 inches long. It's about 4.3 inches tall, top to bottom, highest point to lowest point. And crucially, and we're talking pretty much at the cylinder here, it's 1.3 inches wide. Now to give you a little perspective, the slide on a 1911 is just shy of 1 inch wide. And then like you get into something like a double stack Glock or something, and you're right at that 1.3, 1.25 to 1.3 inches width. So at its widest point, it's in league with some of these other guns. Not quite as thin as a 1911, but it's about on par for your average double stack gun that most people are carrying these days as far as semi-automatic. It is of course quite thinner than a 6-shot medium frame revolver like a Model 19 or something like that, or a Model 10, whatever, from Smith & Wesson, Model 65, what have you. So it is quite a bit thinner than that. So it makes it very comfortable to fit into a waistband. And the grip is so small and so narrow and so thin that even though you might have a little bit of bulge at the waistline, the waistband from the cylinder, it is very unobtrusive, especially if you have it in a very thin-walled holster. And then the grip is so short and so thin that even despite the slight bulk of the cylinder, the gun, it disappears under anything, even the lightest clothing. This gun is, for all intents and purposes, invisible once you get it under clothing. So it's really a good carry gun from that perspective. If you need something for deep concealment, this is a good way to go. Well, what do you think about all this? Do you like this Model 642? Have you carried one? Do you like snub-nosed revolvers? Love to hear your story. Go down in the comments, share it with us, please. And while we're talking about sharing, don't forget to share the video so the whole world will know about it. Let's get into all the reasons why then the 642 is truly the best snub-nosed revolver ever produced. First of all, we talked about the weight. It's in that sweet spot, as I mentioned, between the lightweight bodyguard or like an LCR Ruger. Those are too light in my opinion. And it's got a good weight balance, weight compromise versus the steel frame guns. So it's lighter than the steel frame guns and it's much more comfortable to carry and much more convenient. And yeah, it's a little snappy. There we go. Snappy little rascal. That's with standard pressure stuff. When you shoot it, but it's not bad. It's certainly manageable by just about anybody, I think, and that's with standard pressure loads. The plus P loads make it a little more of a handful, but again, with practice, even though the grips are small, you can still, you can still do a pretty good job. So it's heavy enough that you can shoot it well enough. It's not superb, but you can shoot it well enough. But it's not so light like these other guns that become basically unmanageable. Now, frankly, I think this gun would even be better in 32 special as opposed to 38. You don't give up too much power, and the recoil would be even nicer in this lightweight gun. But it's in 38, that's the most common ammo. 38 is kind of the way to go. Now, Smith & Wesson does make an all-blue version of this gun. It's called the 442, and so you've got blue steel, blue carbon steel barrel and cylinder. Still the alloy frame, it's just anodized black, basically, or a very dark blue of some sort. But the stainless gun is superior to that model, in my opinion, because it's corrosion resistance. And let's face it, this is the type of gun, especially if you're carrying it in deep concealment, especially in hot weather or something, it's going to be right next to your body. It's going to be exposed to all that perspiration, and on a day in and day out basis, or in your pocket, there's a lot of humidity in a pocket that builds up. So this is much more corrosion resistant and really the better way to go than the blued steel 442. Another big advantage of the 642, it is a wonderful instinctive pointing weapon. Anybody can pick this gun up, and all they have to do is just raise it and level it at the target, and they're going to be pretty much on target, especially for close range. And a feature that makes this just an outstanding gun is this shrouded hammer. And unlike that old bodyguard, it doesn't have that big humpy cowling over the hammer. It's got this very elegant, very stepped down design. It does not snag. And it just slides out from underneath clothing on a draw. It just is absolutely snag free, which is an outstanding thing. I can't say that for a lot of the semi-autos, small semi-autos in the 380, 32 range. Those all generally, the slides are somewhat squared off, or they even have a hammer sticking out. Those are snaggy type designs. I mean, I've shot a number of 380 autos over the years and owned several, and they all, even the best ones, if you're drawing them from especially a front pocket, a pant pocket, out of a pocket holster, the back of that slide kind of has some extra friction against the pocket, and you really have to give it a pretty good yank to make sure you overcome that. This gun just comes right out. It's just so smooth and so fast. It's just brilliant in that respect. Hey, if you've ever thought about having your own GunTuber channel, I've got a treat for you. We have a new channel called GunTuber U, and we'll give you a quick link up here, card over there, and you can go check it out. We'd love to have you over there, and you can learn everything about becoming a GunTuber. There you go. There is why the Model 642 from Smith & Wesson is the best snub-nosed revolver ever produced. And we want to thank you for taking your valuable time and spending it with us here at the LocaCarnivore today. And remember, always insist upon facts. Thanks for watching.
Ha ha ha!